Legend Total War here, and today we're doing another tier list using Tier Maker, this time revisiting the Kislev unit roster tier list, because there's a few units that have been added since Shadows of Change in 4.2, and some of the original units might have had their position changed, because there's a new Lord that's changed things up a little bit with the Druzina, boosted some units, which makes them somewhat more viable. So before we get into this tier list, I do need to let you guys know that this video here is sponsored by Manscaped. So you guys know I've been partnered with Manscaped for ages now. Love the products, love working with them. It's probably the longest running partnership we've ever had on the channel. In fact, many of these videos here wouldn't be possible without Manscaped support. Now I want to talk to you guys just briefly about the Handyman. This is a product that allows me to shave super quickly. Now most of the time I've got a beard, but sometimes I want to get rid of my beard. So what I do, usually when I've got a thick beard, is I get my lawnmower, shave off all the bushy bits, and then finish it off with a close shave with the Handyman. The whole process usually takes me about 5 minutes, no cuts, no rashes, no nothing, and I'm just done really quickly. So if that's something that interests you, check out Manscaped. Link in the description and in the pinned comment. I can't recommend them enough. Once again, big thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. Okay, with that being said, let's get into the tier list itself. Now you will notice that I don't have Astankia's unique units for her campaign that's available in the forest chain. I really wanted to focus on the units that are only available to all of the Kislevite factions, just to keep things simple here, because otherwise things tend to get very complicated and the whole sort of tier list starts to fall apart. I've done some very complicated tier lists in the past and they have not been the best received, so we're just trying to keep it simple here, so that's why I've excluded them for this case here. We can always do another tier list for them another day if we really need to. Anyway, another thing to keep in mind here is the criteria that we're going to use to judge these units. It's not simply a case of strongest units goes up the top, weakest units goes down the bottom sort of thing. I think that is a very low value tier list. So what I consider to be an S or A tier unit there's a number of factors that a unit has to basically contribute to, rather than just being a strong unit. So convenience of recruitment, low upkeep cost, how easy they are to replace, the amount of damage output, how valuable they are, other lords and their ability to boost those units, so how much they're able to become better throughout the campaign, and how easy these units are to use as well. So just want to keep that in mind. So the first unit we want to deal with here is the Kislevite Warrior, which was added in 4.2 just a couple of days ago, and I'm going to put this unit here at A tier. Now this is not a strong unit, but it's a tier 0 unit that's very easy to replace. And what I mean by tier 0 is that it can be recruited from a settlement without requiring a barrack. So I've got Warhammer 3 open here, and I'll just explain what that means. This is just a Kislev campaign that I've been playing in my own time. So if we have a look at a settlement, tier 0 means that we can recruit. If we basically own the settlement, we don't need to build a barracks. We got Kislevite warriors and Kossars. So an actual tier 1 unit would mean requiring an additional building. So you've got the Kossars with spear for that. Now the reason why these are so much higher values being at tier 0 as opposed to requiring this one is because you have limited build slots, especially in the early stages of the campaign. So filling that build slot there means that you're not building something that's going to generate income. And the thing is with Kislev is they have a lot of buildings that generate income. And so depriving yourself of one of those for units that are potentially side grades is not really worth it sometimes. That's why tier 0 units are high value as far as I'm concerned. So that's why it's going into A tier. Now it's also a good line holder, which is something that Kislev needs because it's got a decent arch unit there. So these guys here, they hold the line, they've got good melee defense, they've got armor piercing. Not that you need it in the early stage of the campaign that often, but it's good to have it, better to have it than not have it. It's got anti-large, and because it's got Buy Our Blood, if it does end up breaking, well, it lasts an additional 30 seconds, giving these guys enough time to just really lay into the enemy. It's also the highest number of units that the Kislev has on offer at 120 troops. On ultra unit scale compared to 190 or 80 for their elite troops. So really high value units in the early stage of the campaign, but later down the track you're probably going to phase these out once you've established more build slots and you start building higher tier buildings. You just not really want these guys to, hold off against demons and big monsters. They're not going to be able to sort that out. But in the early stage of the campaign, they're very good. And they're also good in emergency because tier 0 units tend to be able to be recruited globally very quickly in one turn. You just need 10 settlements and then you've got access to them. So that's also very good, because sometimes you're going to need emergency armies, because Kislev's campaigns can be quite hectic. You know, the enemy don't really let up on you for quite a long time. Anyway, moving on to a much higher tier unit, we've got the Tsar Guard. So the regular Tsar Guard and the Tsar Guard with great swords. Now this requires a military building, obviously, and this is a tier 3 troop. Now the military building that these guys come from is not super convenient to construct, in my opinion, because Kislev has got a whole bunch of different buildings. And if we go into here, I'll just showcase it. So this is the building that they come from. If you're building it at a major settlement. Now the problem here is that, let's just say at Fort Jakova, you've got 7 build slots outside of the main building, and there's just so much variety to choose from, and this doesn't have any additional value apart from increasing the recruit rank of those particular units. So I don't value building this one very often, which means if you put these guys in your army and they get wiped out, it's kind of difficult to replace them. But luckily with Kislev, because they're able to reduce their global recruitment rate, recruitment time down so much, you can actually build this at just one location in the world and then globally recruit them in one turn pretty much anywhere, even in red territory later down the track. And that's very handy. So it's not so bad, but you're going to get this to be convenient later down the track. It's not going to be available early, and since it's only a tier 3 unit, I tend to put these off for quite a while. I'm going to put it at B tier for both of them. They're good troops, they're good solid line holders. I just consider them inconvenient to obtain compared to other units. Like, it's oftentimes, in my opinion, better to have 2 or 3 units of Kislevite warriors than one of these guys here, because you also have to take upkeep costs into consideration, because you can easily afford like 3 of these for one of them. Then we've got the regular Kossar. This is also going to go into A tier. These guys here just work really well together. So I used to just spam these guys in my armies, and now I get a mix of them. Usually about a third of my army to be Kislevite warriors, and then the other remaining slots to be Kossars, because these guys are the damage dealers, and these guys hold the line. They're able to hold the line a little bit, but nowhere near as well as this one. So that's why you don't want to go half and half. Otherwise, you're reducing the amount of damage output. Okay, then we've got the Kossars with spears. So I don't consider this unit to be relevant at all anymore. It's become outdated because it's got the same upkeep cost as the Kislevite warriors. The whole purpose of it was to have essentially frontline capabilities, so that they're higher melee defense and they've got anti-large. But why would I recruit this and require a military building when I've got a much more convenient unit now? So this would have previously been a B tier unit, but I'm actually going to put it at C tier now, just because it's really not convenient. By the time I start building a barracks, I'm well beyond needing this unit. So I just don't think it's an important unit at all anymore. Not a bad unit by any means, it's kind of inconvenient and now kind of redundant. Then we've got the Armored Kossars. These are decent units. So they're recruited from the same military building, but these are, if we have a look here, these are tier 2 units. So when you're at tier 2, you've got 2 build slots. So you can certainly justify building one economic building and then also a military building if you really want. You know, their upkeep cost isn't that much of a step up. They sacrifice range and ammunition for way better holding power. So in the mid game, you can definitely justify swapping out your Kislevite warriors for armored Kossars quite easily, because these guys here, they're going to have armor, they're going to have more melee defense, more morale, they're better line holders, and they've got missile attacks as well. So I'm going to put these guys here at B tier as well, just because I don't consider them to be essential in my armies, but they're good additions if you want to put them in. Like, B tier is not bad. B tier is basically, think of it this way, B tier means meet expectations, A tier means exceeds expectations, and S tier gives me a hard on, basically. Sort of. And then, of course, below expectations and just don't recruit these units at all, sort of thing. Then we've got the Akshina Ambushers. Now, this is a really good unit, but it recently got a nerf. I probably would have put it in S tier when it was still a mostly armor-piercing unit, but now that it's been nerfed a little bit, I'm actually going to put it where I think it belongs, in A tier, because it does require a military building, but that military building actually comes with some economic benefit, and also you can recruit heroes from it. So it's a high value building to construct, whereas these guys here come from what I would consider to be a low value construction. So these guys here should be readily available to you fairly early on in your campaign, and they're much better archers. They've got longer range, more damage output, and they stalk, which is tactically much more useful for you. So it does come at basically twice the price of upkeep of these two guys here, but I think that it does provide the value at A tier there, so that's why I'm going to put it there. Streltsis, so they come in at tier 3 from the same military building as these guys here. I'd say by the time you get to tier 3, you've got 3 build slots in your minor settlements. These guys become a viable choice at that point. You know, between about turn 20 and 40, these guys are pretty good. And this is your gun unit. So there's a marked advantage of having guns over archers. So these guys here, archers, and these ones are guns. Now, their guns are not armor piercing, where these ones are. Now, what guns are specifically useful for is getting rid of small single entities. So when you're going up against factions like Norska, oftentimes they'll have characters like skinwolves. Now, skinwolves are considered large, but their entity is actually quite small. And archers are not great at hitting them because they're quick, but guns are very good at taking those guys out. So I'm going to put the Streltsi at A tier, because by the time you get them, you're kind of going to need them. They're very good units. And there's a fair bit that you can do to boost them as well, give them extra range. All the missile units can increase their range through the tech tree. But yeah, this is a high value unit when you get to tier 3. Definitely not worthy of S tier. I think it just slightly exceeds expectations just because of how much you're going to need them. Then we've got the Ice Guard. Now, I'm going to put both Ice Guard variants at S tier because, in my opinion, these exceed expectations if you build them right. So, Katarin's Doomstack, for one thing, should be Ice Guard because she reduces their upkeep cost by 50%. There's a lot you can do to boost their range. There's many heroes that you can get to boost them as well, so like with the Ice Witches through the Ice Court. Both the Lord and the hero type is able to boost these units. So on their own, they're probably just an A tier unit, but when you actually give them the boost that they need, and there's a fair bit they can get through the tech tree, I reckon they're a cut above the rest of these guys here. And this is a unit that you can, in the later stages of the campaign, replace in your armies quite easily. You can globally recruit them in one turn, thanks to all the global recruitment cooldown reductions that you get through your tech tree and through the landmarks at Prague, I believe. So I believe this is an S tier unit. Now, specifically, you got anti-large here, and then you go to anti-infantry there. So having a mix of them in your army can provide a lot of value. There are also magical attacks for magical missiles, which, when fighting against demons, is going to be very useful, especially considering your other missile units don't have access to magical attacks. So really good units there. Then we've got Little Grom. So Little Grom, this is a bit of a weird one, because you're only artillery piece, and as far as an artillery piece is concerned, it's not the best in the game. However, there's a lot you can do to boost them. The Ice Witches and Ice Lords, they're able to boost them, reduce their upkeep costs, all that kind of stuff. And a cheap unit is a high value unit, because it just means on the campaign map, if a unit is cheap, you can just get more of them. If a unit is overly expensive, then you need more cities in order to sustain that unit, and so that unit has to actually provide better value in every one of your battles, which we'll get into that in a little bit down the track. So having high tier units that can actually be quite cheap is very high value. That's why I put them at S tier. So when it comes to the Little Grom, on its own, I'd probably put it at A or even B tier. But because there's so much you can do to boost them, boost their range, they're actually okay in melee. This is a very versatile unit. And so I'm actually going to put it at S tier because you're going to fight sieges in this game. And this unit here is your solution to sieges. You knock down towers, knock down walls, no problem for them. You can now restore their ammunition using the Druzina Lords. So very useful unit. There's a lot you can do to boost them. And they become very effective. They're pretty much useful against every unit type, except for things that are really, really small and far away. Okay, then moving on to cavalry. We've got the peasant cavalry, what are they called again? Dervishers or something? So they're at the cavalry building over here. So that's a tier 1 unit, the Kosovite dervishes. I do not consider this unit a high value unit whatsoever, because it's the same problem with Kossars. Like you just don't need them, really, ever. So I am gonna put this one at D tier. I'm just not gonna build that building. So, well, just in the early stage of the campaign at least. And at tier 1, it's just this. Pretty much every other option at tier 1 is better than this guy. It's just, it can't really beat anything. The only thing it's good at is dealing with enemy missile units. And the Kislevite start positions usually have you pitted up against, except for a Stankia, you're going up against like Warriors of Chaos, Greenskins, Skaven. Against the Skaven it's okay, but the other ones, they're just not useful against the enemies that you're fighting. So that's why I'm going to put that at D tier there. Now, as for the Horse Archers, I'll put that one at C tier. It's a tier 2 unit. I don't think it's overly convenient to recruit, but at least the Druzinas now boost their missile attack to give them anti-infantry. So that's something that you can do, but I still don't consider them particularly high value. Their overall damage output is not particularly good. Okay, then we've got Winged Lancers. So this one here is the tier 3 from that build chain there, which I don't consider that a convenient building to recruit. So the unit themselves is pretty good. You know, it's got a glorious charge. They perform at their tier level. But the problem here for me is the damn building that they're recruited from. So I'm going to put this one at C tier just because it's inconvenient to recruit. Then you've got the Griffin Legion. Now, looking at the Griffin Legion, so this comes from a different building. This is actually a tier 4 unit. Now, this is the kind of unit that I would probably prioritize recruiting globally, not sitting in a province waiting for it to be done. And what you can do with them, there is, once you've obtained Prague and you get it high enough level, there's landmarks here that you can get where you can actually build it at tier 3. And at that point, hopefully you've got your global recruit time down. Of course, when you get this to tier 5, that's what really brings it down. If you really want to get cavalry, my advice, go straight to Griffin Legion, because you can get it at tier 3. And it's not that difficult to get access to Prague, at least in the case of everyone except for Ostankia, really. So I consider the Griffin Legion much higher value. But cavalry for Kislev I would classify as not essential, so I'm just going to put that as B. I know that, you know, these are some of Kislev's core units, but just due to the way that the game functions, cavalry just isn't that great. Your infantry just outclasses them in most cases. So that's why I'm going to put it at B tier there. It's the best of the cavalry up until, of course, you get to the Warbears. Now, Warbears, on the other hand, they're S tier. These are, even without boosts, just stupidly strong units. Well worth the price. Very expensive cavalry unit, but these things hit like a truck. They're anti-large. They're a 16 entity unit. In Boris Ursus's army, they're super cheap because he reduces the upkeep cost. But even without him, these are some stupidly strong units. So if you were going to go with any kind of cavalry, my advice is to skip these guys entirely and just go straight to Warbears, because these are truly great units, in my opinion. Of course, all of this is just my opinion. You're free to disagree if you think otherwise. Okay, now moving on to the sleds. So we've got the light sleds and the heavy sleds. Now, in my opinion, light sleds are actually S tier. Now, this is a unit that is a little bit difficult to use, but the reason it's going into S tier is because this unit here can punch way above its pay grade due to the existence of certain traits for ice witches. So I'll just go in and show you what I mean here. So I've actually just built a light war sled doomstack. I've gotten amazing effectiveness out of this, and you'll notice that the upkeep cost isn't all that bad. That's because this lord here has got the ice charioteer trait. So you may have to roll a few times before you get one with it, but reducing upkeep cost by 30%, that's obviously not a small amount. And then the Frost Maidens can also get Ice Charioteer, and this stacks so you can actually put more of them into the army to get even more out of it. So eventually you can have these guys at even 0 upkeep cost. And like I said before, 0 free units means that you can train more units elsewhere. So really high values. In addition to that, Okay, here's another thing. If a unit is free but is terrible on the battlefield, then what's the point? But these are actually awesome on the battlefield with a couple of exceptions. They're not great at walled sieges, so try to avoid those kind of battles. But in field battles where the terrain isn't completely bloody skewed all over the place, like loads of trees everywhere, cliffs and all this kind of stuff, these guys perform really well against most factions of the game, except for factions that are really quick. Because these guys have a lot of damage output. You can boost it by a fair bit in your Lord skill tree. And they're able to outrun most units in the game. And then once they've run out of ammo, they're really good at just charging into the enemy, and you can use them as anti-infantry. So what you want to do is use your missile attack to take out all their fast units, which are usually the monsters anyway. And then once you're done, take out all the slow units by charging into them. So a little bit difficult to use, but once you get the hang of it, definitely an S tier unit in my opinion. I've managed to defeat Archaon's army using this kind of crap. An army that essentially costs like 500 upkeep. Not in this case here, I need more of these heroes. But yeah, that's why I put that one S tier. Now, when it comes to the heavy war sled, I'm actually going to put that at B tier because it all comes down to convenience of recruiting. The building that you construct these guys from is a high priority to get because it increases your global recruit slots, it increases the income of the province, increases your local recruit slots as well. However, this is recruited at, let me just check that, I think it's tier 3. Yeah, it's recruited at tier 3. This one's recruited at tier 4. But another thing is that this takes 1 turn to recruit, and these take 2 turns to recruit. And I don't like it when units take too long to recruit. So it's not that these are bad, it's just that I think these are better. Because the stat differences, these have obviously more armor and more melee attack, but they actually have quite significant less speed. And I think speed is kind of more important with these kind of units. So I actually think that the light war sled performs better than the heavy war sled, which is why I'm going to put it at B tier. In fact, I'd even go so far as to put it at C tier. I never recruit these units just because the existence of the light war sled is all I really need. Just think it's far superior. Okay, then we're going on to the snow leopard here. So this is a very situational unit, very good anti-large troop. Absolutely terrible at dealing with infantry. So you really don't want to just send a lone unit into infantry. Also, they work quite well in packs, quite good against ogre kingdoms. So if you're going up against ogres, bring a whole bunch of snow leopards, you'll take them out quite easily. But going up against factions like the Chaos and Skaven, your initial enemies, I don't think this is a particularly good unit to get. Which is why I usually disband the starting one that I get with Katarin's army. So I'm going to put this one at B tier just because of how situational it is. It can be really good in some situations and really bad in others. And it just comes down to tailor your army depending on what you're going up against. If you're going up against a lot of large troops, bring the snow leopards. If you're not, definitely don't bring them. But I would say it sort of meets expectations. Very squishy unit, but dishes out a lot of damage. Okay, then we've got the things in the woods. So this is a bit of a weird unit for Kislev because it feels more like a chaos unit. But it's a monstrous infantry unit. It's okay. So it's recruited from the same build chain as the Akshina ambushes. Let me just get it up. So I think I've got that build chain. Yeah, I've got it over here. So it's a tier 3 unit. This is a building that I prioritize getting because it does have access to hag witches, which is really good. And you've got a fair amount of money that you can generate from here. So I tend to try to get as much income as possible so I can get as many armies as possible. So I always build the caravans in every single settlement. I usually build the farm estate, and then I kind of prioritize getting this one here if I've got 3 slots available. Sometimes I build the Orthodoxy Church just if I need some more patriarchs. But you can get more patriarchs through the Ice Court by having certain lords, so you don't need to have them necessarily. So this is a high priority building to get. So these guys here, your Monstrous infantry, they're okay anti-infantry, but you've already got plenty of anti-infantry. And I would say that these guys here kind of just meet expectations. They're cool. They're cool. No one really boosts them by much except for maybe a Stankia. But they're just okay. That's all I can really say about them. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. Okay, then we've got the Frostworm. So this is a new one, and I did some extensive testing with this today in custom battles and in campaign to sort of see what you can get out of these guys. Now, if you take their base stats without any boosts, these are actually awful units. They require a lot of micro. If you leave them in prolonged combat, they're terrible in most situations. They don't have physical resistance or ward save to begin with. You can get some physical resistance in the tech tree, and in your skill line through your lords, you can give it spell resistance, but no actual ward save. These are big units, and so that allows for infantry units to just have a lot of entities hit it at once. So this is the kind of unit that you definitely don't want to spam, because yeah, in an infantry blob, these guys go down really quickly. Now, there's a lot you can do to boost it at the moment, but I imagine that's going to change very quickly, because there's a skill that the Druzinas are able to get that gives regen for the entire army, but it's not supposed to do that. It's only supposed to provide regen for hag witches. So what you could do at the moment is get a Druzina, pop a bunch of these guys in, and because they've got, you know, high amount of health, single entities benefit greatly from regeneration. You could get a lot of value out of it at that point, but I don't think that it's going to remain in the game for long. I reckon the hotfix that is bound to be around the corner, if not before this video even comes out. At the time of recording, there hasn't been the hotfix, but who knows? These videos usually go out 2 or 3 days after they've been recorded, because it requires editing and stuff. So this, I don't think it's going to last. So I'm going to put the Frostworm at actual B tier. However, the Frostworm mount for Katerin is pretty damn good. Just because she's able to provide loads of ward save and extra speed increases just because of Katerin's skill tree. But as a regular unit, I would not put it at S tier. This is a tier 3 unit, by the way, and it performs at a tier 3 level, I think. But I think that their size really lets them down. But they've got a really cool charge animation, so if you can micro them, putting 1 or 2 of these guys in your army could be really good. But this is not a unit that I would spam, personally. Okay, then we've got the Elemental of Beasts. So I think that this unit here has actually taken a nerf by becoming essentially a demon. I would have put this at S tier previously, but we also have to keep in mind that we're able to regenerate them now with the Druzinas. So at the moment, you can actually make them S tier, but again, I don't think they're going to remain that way for very long. They've got a Mortis Engine effect, so that's very good. I'm going to put them at A tier, because this is a very expensive unit. You have to take that in consideration. It is recruited from a convenient building, same one as this one. It's a building that I prioritize getting because it's got income and increased capacity for hag witches, which are really good heroes. So I think it belongs in A tier. Definitely doom stackable, just not the best doom stack ever. Then we've got the Elemental Bears. So I think Elemental Bears have once again taken a nerf by becoming a demon unit, because these both used to be just unbreakable, so they would fight to the death. Now what happens now is that these guys will get to, in some cases, 75% of their health and then just friggin' die, because you know once they start disintegrating, it's hard to get them to stop. And even though they've got that extra physical resistance, it's only a small amount extra. And it used to be really good to just bring them down to like the smallest amount of health and then just pull them out of combat. But now you have to really keep your eye on them. So again, it's another unit that you can have regeneration with Druzinas. But I don't think that this is an amazing unit because it's big. Same problem that the Frostworm has. It's big. It's kind of slow. Very easy to shoot. It can do a lot of damage. Its breath attack is pretty good, but I do not think that this is an S tier unit. So I'm going to put that at A tier. Now, it is also possible, even after the Druzina is gone, to get Boris Ursus and I doomstack with these guys. But I personally think that the Warbear Riders massively outclass these guys here in Boris's army, even with these ones with regen. And this is a tier below it, and it's a cheaper unit. So I would choose Warbears over Ice Elemental Bears any day of the week. So these are the units in the late stage of the campaign that I lean heaviest on, and these are the units here that I just never recruit them. Like if I start off with them, I'll keep them, or if I confederate someone, I might keep them. Not this one though, but I don't ever recruit them. These ones here, yeah, I recruit them if you know it's emergency army, or if I just feel like recruiting them. And these ones here, you know, they're good. So that's the tier list, you know, as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, all of these things here are my opinions. This is not objective truth, and your playstyle might be very different from mine. Also, the difficulty that I play on will skew my opinions on this kind of stuff. I tend to require a lot of efficiency, and so units that are inconvenient to recruit or inefficient or just don't perform very well, even if it's got cool factor, just don't really do it for me, because any unit that lets me down in battle, I just don't recruit it again. Anyway, so that's my tier list. Let me know in the comments below what you think. You will notice here that it is fairly top heavy. There are more units in the S and A tier than there are in the C and D tier. So I think that the Kislev roster is pretty good. And you got an average amount there in the B tier as well. So I think the Kislev roster is in a pretty good state at the moment. Anyway, that's the end of this one here, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Don't forget to check out Manscaped. Link in the description and pinned comment. Appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Later, guys.